Hello and welcome to the Posture Dojo podcast. My name is Sam Miller and I'll be your host on this postural transformation journey, sharing some stories from my own healing journey of an 85-degree kyphoscoliosis and speaking with experts from a variety of fields to bring together a holistic approach to postural correction. Today I'm excited to speak with Christine, who seems to be fusing together yoga and Pilates, has created an immense amount of very valuable content on social media and YouTube. I know I've seen her stuff for a very long time and she knows what she's talking about. So I'm excited to dive in and speak with Christine. How did you end up in this position of guiding people to heal and correct their postures?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, first of all. I think very similar to you, possibly, was my own journey. So I was diagnosed with scoliosis when I was a child, when I was 5 or 6, so quite early on. I'm originally from Germany, so we have the checkups for children, screening for scoliosis. So I was lucky enough that it was picked up early. And so the word scoliosis had been around my whole life, really. I always knew I had to manage it. I had to look after my back. I was in physiotherapy for a long time. It wasn't severe enough for me to have a brace or even consider surgery. I think because also it was picked up very early, I was straight away put into those exercise programs. And then I didn't do very much when I was a teenager. I just had other interests, as we all do. And then when I was in my early 20s, I worked in the hospitality industry at that time. I started to have lots of problems with my back. So I started to have back pain on a regular basis. And I knew I had to do something. So I went to all the therapists of osteo and physio, acupuncture, all of that helped. But it didn't have a lasting effect. So it was really only when I started to be proactive and started to practice yoga on a regular basis that I found a change. And then there was a period of time when I was really very much into yoga and I did any yoga class I could find. When it went up and then it went down again. So I realized maybe this kind of completely symmetrical approach isn't quite working for me because my body isn't symmetrical. And then I started to seek out people who know about scoliosis. I trained with Elise Milling-Browner in the US, Browning-Miller, sorry, I always get her name mixed up. Schroth therapists, various specialists in the field, gathering all the knowledge, and then really with that idea, I want to share what I've learned as well. I want to pass on everything that I've learned because I found there's many resources available for children, for teenagers, but once you're an adult, you know this as well, right? Very often you're being dismissed by health professionals as, well, come back when you need surgery, can't do anything for you right now. And I always thought that's not good enough. There must be something that we can do to be more proactive. And yeah, that's really how I came to this. I trained as a yoga teacher. Obviously, I did all that specialist training, really seeking out those people who know. I've got a podcast as well called Back Chat, where we talk about these things, learning more and more. And then attracting people as well who've got much more severe scoliosis than my own, who've been through spinal surgery. And yeah, we're all struggling with the same thing, but building this kind of community, again, same as you do as well, of people who are all struggling with the same thing and then sharing what we learn along the way.
Yeah, we all are learning. Fascia as a concept wasn't really understood. I think we're still not completely understanding it, but it was only officially diagnosed as our organ and our largest organ in 2017, I believe. So just one piece of this puzzle that we're all putting together. How would you describe your current technique, methodology? What pieces have you put together?
Yeah, and this has changed over the years very much. So if you look at some of my older YouTube videos, and I've been on YouTube for a long time, there would probably be things now where I would be like, no, actually, I don't agree with this anymore, because we all learn. We can only share what we know at the time. With some of it, I have come a little bit more full circle. So I went down the very much the yoga route, uh, the traditional Iyengar yoga alignment based route to begin with. And then there came a time when I was working more with Schroth therapists who were very much, you're not going to do any side bending, you're not going to do any twists, you're really going to work on stability, and you're going to breathe in that position, and you're going to skip all the rest. Elongation, obviously, expansion, all these magic words. And then I'm now at this position. Actually, I went to see an osteopath today. He was like, you're very good at hiding your scoliosis. She was amazed, right? Because she looked at me and she was like, oh, you hardly have any scoliosis. And then I said, if I stand in my pattern, you will see it. And then I showed it to her and she was like, oh, wow, okay, so you are really good at hiding it. But what happened basically is I'm holding it so well that my body almost is a little bit confused and has built this complete bracing system, this system of stability. So I am strong, I am upright, but she was like, you do need to let go as well. So you need to get your mobility in. It's a balance, right? It's always a balancing act. And there is no advice that is the same for everyone. And I think very much, I'm 43 now, it has changed over the years, right? When I was younger, I needed more stability. I needed more strength. As I was getting older, things become a little bit less mobile. So maybe I need a little bit more mobility. I've got 2 children. Really, I need to calm down and relax as well. So it's evolving is basically the answer to that. It's evolving and it's changing all the time. I don't like... Yeah, have you heard of Z Health? The guys at Z Health?
Z Health.
It's look them up. You will enjoy them. It's a neuroscience, movement neuroscience education platform. That's how I would describe them. And what I really liked about them, they said something like, we don't have a method, we are passing on information. And we're passing on education. And that's really, I found that very powerful, because we don't need another method. We need more information. We need to understand. We need to educate ourselves. And then it's very much a tailored thing, right? What works for one person doesn't necessarily work for the next person. So, and that's how I approach working with my clients as well. So I wouldn't say that there is one method. I make it around the person and what they need at the time, at which stage they are in their life is important. What else is going on apart from scoliosis, kyphosis, right? There's all sorts of other things going on as well that we need to address.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly a more holistic approach, looking at how these emotions, how these thought patterns, behavioral patterns can influence the way we hold ourselves. And that's certainly a major area of interest for me. I'm curious, where's your curiosity taking you? It sounds like some of the neurological programming you're getting into. Where's your curiosity going as it comes to this?
Yeah, absolutely. So for sure, neuroscience is a big piece of the puzzle for me. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because when you kind of work in this field, you've got all these different approaches and they might sometimes contradict each other. And then you get taken down a particular path, you get taken down a rabbit hole, and it takes a while until you see those connections and until you start putting things together. I think I've moved away from this idea of we need to strengthen the weak muscles, we need to just stretch the short muscles. It's not as easy as that. There is more to it. And with this kind of neuroscience, it's also thinking of how does the structure affect us on this higher order and vice versa as well? How does this all work together? And it's very interesting. There's so much to learn and there's so much research still to be done for sure. But yeah, it's very exciting as well.
For sure. And any person can begin that research in their own body as well, right? Because right now we do know that the brain essentially extends as the spinal cord throughout the spinal column, and we do have an influence over that. We have this kind of information superhighway, and it sends and receives information, and as soon as we can become aware of a certain muscle, or as soon as we go into a certain position, we activate or fire up a particular pathway that we haven't fired up before, a whole new world of possibilities can open up. So when we start going into how we can access the spine through the brain and its experiences and pathways, that's when this gets really interesting. So I guess you mentioned strengthening the weak side, stretching the short side is something you've moved on from. What other yoga position, is there anything you've ruled out? Do you have a list of things that somebody should not do when they have a scoliosis?
Yeah, great question. I would hate to tell anyone that they can't do something because as we know, we've got Olympic athletes with scoliosis. We know that people can do amazing things. So who am I to tell them you can't do this, right? However, obviously, some people are not very body aware, and some people find it difficult to even feel their bodies. So just telling them, oh, just listen to your body, isn't necessarily good enough for some people, because they're like, I don't trust my body. It might be telling me this, but actually that's not true. And then I suffer the next day. There are a set of kind of poses where I would say, let's approach these with caution, especially if you are maybe a little bit older, if you're not a teenager anymore, and maybe if you haven't moved for a while, then I would say, let's work on those poses mainly where we are in a more neutral position, where we are in a lengthened spine position, and then move from there, work on that stability first, right? So for me personally, there are things that I have taken out of my practice. I don't do headstands anymore. I don't do shoulder stands, for example, anymore, because I feel like that they don't do anything for me. If there was an element of, oh, it's fun, or something like that at least, then I would say yes. For example, handstands. I do practice handstands. But I know, for example, a headstand, I don't need to do it. There is a compensating curve here in my neck. There's always going to be asymmetrical loading when I am upside down, even if I'm standing upright, obviously. I don't want to put my neck in this position. It's not something that I teach either for people. I just don't see any benefit really from it, especially when you've got scoliosis. Are there poses? There's definitely things. If you just want a blank statement for anyone, it's the twists with the back bends together in yoga. And if you practice yoga, there are some extreme poses that are not functional, that are not really, we're not quite sure if they serve any purpose, to be fair.
Right.
Other than looking good on Instagram, maybe. Mm-hmm. So yeah, they're definitely the ones to look at.
I agree with you, and it is a bit of a tough question, because the answer is, like as you were mentioning before, what stage are you at? What age are you at? What awareness of your body do you have? How aware are you of how your spine and your rib cage and your pelvis and head and your entire skeleton, and are you aware of how that is, and are you aware of how you're breathing as you're doing those twists or those movements? And are you training to try to go to do as much as possible, or are you feeling out your range and checking for healthy mobility to your range? And so it gets really complicated really quickly. And even if it's probably one of the most common questions that I get is, will it work? Can it work? So someone who's 18, 19 years old, and they have been diagnosed with a scoliosis, and they're seeing a range of alternative treatments at this point, from Schroth method and yoga and Pilates, like with a slant towards scoliosis. They're seeing all these kind of alternative breathing, gymnastic movement methods to treat their scoliosis. And before they start, their most common question is usually, will it work? What do you say to that? Because I think there's a bit to break down in that question itself.
Yeah, first of all, it's only going to work if you do it and if you're consistent. It's definitely not going to work if you're just watching videos about it and then maybe do it once a week or something like that. So I think we have to be realistic about these things. Also, it's not going to be an overnight success. So sometimes I think there is some misleading information out there where this is a before and then after, right? And then we think with one session we're going to create these amazing changes. And we can create amazing changes, but they're probably more internal changes, right? You feel completely different after the session than you feel before a session. So it is a long-term thing. It's a marathon, really. It's not a sprint. And I can now say, after 20 years of practicing yoga, and again, my osteopath confirmed this today. She was like, if you hadn't been doing this, you would be in a very different situation. But you would, obviously, there's no proof in this. Would I be in a different position? But yes, I would probably. But it's about those small changes over time, constantly tweaking what you need at that point as well. And absolutely, I do think you can make it work, but you're gonna have to put the effort in. You're gonna have to be proactive, and you can't expect somebody else to do it for you.
Yeah, and I guess getting clear on your expectations of what is working as well. And there's a lot of unknown to know, okay, is it, in the beginning, you're like, can it be completely fixed? And then at some point, depending on the type of curve you have, depending on your age, you start getting an idea of how much, or I guess, what is fixing for you, or what is success for you. Yeah. I have a structural hyperkyphoscoliosis, so I have a very rigid 85-degree curve around my T10. Yeah. So I don't expect that area to reduce in curve, but there is so much that I can work on, and I don't really have a choice. And we've seen what happens when you take the path of, I don't believe it's going to work. Maybe I do, but I try it once, I don't see the results, and I don't do it. Gravity doesn't care. It doesn't stop. And gravity is 24/7. When we sleep, we get a little leg up a little bit, but we have quite an uphill battle. And as you were saying, it's nanometer by nanometer, reconstituting, rebuilding that inner constitution, the strength, the know-how of combining breath and movement and strength to actually start countering the compromise that's happened in our posture. And that's ultimately what's happened. If you're asking the question, can it be fixed? And you're at that age, 16 to 18, 16 to 20, where you've been diagnosed and you're wondering, is it worth it? I know I can say yes. And it seems like from your story, you're on that path as well, because you're not only you're not only preventing more of the compromise to progress, and that's happening even when people do the fusion surgery, they're seeing that the curves are still progressing. because they might not have had that same inner work, the inner breath building, the inner strength building to help prevent that compromise from progressing. So there's a lot in there, but what would you say to someone who's still on the fence whether they should do something about this, because it seems like a lot of work and they're not, it's happening, but maybe they've got surgery, or maybe they're just like, oh, I'll just let it be. What would you say to someone like that?
Well, there's a few things I would say. First of all, so I do work with teenagers, but my main clientele are probably people over the age of 50. And I can tell you what every single person of these people is saying. They're saying, I wish I had started earlier. Every single person is saying this. I wish I had done something earlier about this, because it's going to make things so much easier. Scoliosis is going to be there. If it's a structural scoliosis, it's going to be there your whole life. So even somebody who then decides, actually, I don't want that uncertainty, I'm just going to have surgery. And sometimes surgery is absolutely necessary, of course, if the organs are affected and all of that. If they decide to have surgery, they still have scoliosis afterwards. It's not going to go away. So the sooner we accept this, and I know this is a very difficult thing, especially if you've just been diagnosed with scoliosis, you don't want it, right? You just want to get rid of it. But I like to see it's not a disease, it's a condition. We are all different. I wear glasses because I've got astigmatism. My eyes are not very good. And I wear my glasses. Sometimes I wear contact lenses. I just have to deal with it, basically. But it's not ruining my life. I'm not letting it ruin my life. So the sooner you find a way to, and I think acceptance is the last thing, the last piece. It's very difficult, right? You can't just tell somebody, you just have to accept it. That's not good enough. The sooner you become interested in yourself and helping yourself, the more kind of empowering this whole thing is, and the more you understand that you get tools to help yourself, right? It's a box of tools. So is your spine going to be straight after all this work? Let's not have this as an expectation, because you're probably going to be disappointed. Are you going to feel better in your body? Absolutely. Are you going to feel more empowered? Are you going to feel stronger? Even if you then decide to have surgery one day, your body is in a much better position to support this. Because I've done many interviews with spinal surgeons, and they say if somebody is like not doing anything for their body, is in a bad kind of mental and physical state, the surgery is going to be a disaster, basically. So there is no downsides, really, is what I would say.
Yeah, and every single person benefits from a health and fitness routine. And with these types of conditions, it's about learning what's in your toolkit. What types of things are you working on to create the most optimal flow in your body? So I work with people in their 20s and 30s who start realizing that, okay, they've been living with a scoliosis or a kyphosis, and they're realizing that gravity isn't going anywhere, and they should probably start doing things that are starting to feel the effects of this kind of compression that happens as you have a compromise under the effect of gravity. And so could you, if you would mind sharing some stories from the 50s and 60s, what are the common challenges that people start experiencing and feeling, and then how do you begin to steer them in a good direction?
Yeah, I mean, we go through phases in life, and for women, of course, we have got hormonal changes as well. We've got a stage in life where we might want to have children. So pregnancy is always a topic with scoliosis, right? Some people are worried, can I have children with severe scoliosis or with a spinal fusion? How is this going to impact my body? Then you've got menopause. Menopause is a time when I see then most people afterwards coming to see me and saying, I've ignored it for so long, but now I really have to do something. Because it's a time where things all of a sudden change. The body changes, degeneration starts to happen. Women will often see a visible change. They might be losing height. They might be experiencing more pain. So it's a time when it's the time when they absolutely want to do something about it. Whereas I would prefer, like you said, you're 25, everything is well in your life. You might not have so much pain, but then you come to me and say, I want to get some tools. I want to address my scoliosis. I want to set myself up for longevity. And I'm not saying that you can't do anything. You can do something at any stage in life. So today I've had a client, he's in his 70s. He started working with me about a year ago when he was 71. He's a very keen golfer and he's got a very pronounced thoracic scoliosis. His wife was telling him, you should really do something about this. I can see it. There's this massive hump there on the right side. She was into yoga, but couldn't quite help him. And he was like, well, I don't even know where to start. And then now, so he's been working with me on a one-to-one basis here. And it's just amazing to see the change in 1 year, right? So it's not been overnight. I'm not going to claim that after 3 sessions there was this massive change. It has taken time, but he only started at 71 and he had accepted some things. Oh, I will never be able to do this. I will never be able to sit on the floor comfortably. But now he can, right? He can do a sun salutation. There was no way even thinking about this a year ago, right? There's no way he would have been able to do this. But it is whatever stage that you are in. Yes, we have to be realistic about the expectations of the outcome, but you can always create a change at any age.
Yeah, and the longer you wait, the longer the unraveling process can be.
Yeah.
If you've been holding sitting tensions and compressions for a while, it can certainly take some time to undo those. I know I'm certainly playing the long game, 39, and I got out of most of the pain and compression issues that were happening to me about 6 years ago. But since then, I've been driven by curiosity to explore, to understand, to see how far I can go and what can actually be done, and also to prepare for the long game, for those 70s, 80s as we go there. And by that time, we're talking 30 years, 20, 30 years, we'll see where technology is at. But I know I'm excited to see where biomedical technology goes by that time.
Yeah.
Obviously, the surgery technology is advancing currently. Instead of the fixed Harrington rods, they have rods that will lengthen and shorten without having to do surgery, so they can actually customize the length of the rods as the person is growing. So I know that's certainly an advancement in medicine. Yeah. Are there any things you're keeping an eye on when it comes to medicine, especially dealing with senior people as well as their body is going through different stages? Is there anything that you're keeping a close eye on for care?
Yeah, unfortunately, there isn't that much. So there is research about, obviously, there's work on improving the methods for surgery. What is missing a little bit is that research. How does it affect the body in the long term, right? We're only now seeing those people, or I'm seeing those people now that had their surgery 40, 50 years ago. And this is a whole unknown area that nobody really knows about, and how to, yes, we know obviously we need to look after those vertebrae below and above the fusion. We know this, but how does it affect the body to have this chunk of the spine that is just not moving? How does this affect? Because especially if we are talking as movement specialists, if we're talking about, oh, we need movement, and movement is actually going to make everything better. What if you can't, right? What if you don't have that mobility? So I think, yes, I would be looking for some more research, definitely, in this area. There is some good research, obviously, coming out from that I've heard from the last kind of SOSORT conference about the testing of muscles, where they looked at, is that concave side, is it stronger? Is it weaker? So that's now, according to the latest research, it was all of a sudden the opposite of what everybody thought always. So everyone is, what does this mean now for all of us? So these are the sort of things I'm keeping an eye on. I'm not a scientist. I am a yoga and Pilates instructor. I do, and I work with people, but we need a little bit more people who are really digging into the data, I think, and who are really, it's difficult, right? It's hard to research these things. So many people have tried it, and it's hard.
It is. It is. Even there's the Dr. Lauren Fishburne studies, and there was a bit of contention with that back and forth between how effective the side planks were or not. It was hard to even come to a consensus on that.
Yeah, and somebody said to me once, you can, whatever you want to prove with a study, you can probably prove with a study. So
Right.
they're never going to be fully objective. It's difficult, right? So but we need more of them, and from different points of view. I think that's the key area. If we have people who come from it from different angles, we get much more of a broader picture, and maybe much more pieces of the puzzle.
Agreed. And yeah, for me, I know it's been helpful to think about these things in new ways, and like even with the side planks, thinking about the physics of a bridge or a suspension bridge and how that would play out. Because I'm wondering what your thoughts are on the side plank, because obviously the standard side plank with your feet straight out, your feet stacked on each other, and a straight sideways arms was shown to, I believe in that study, address more of the lumbar curve. And when the convex side of the curve of the lumbar region is down, the entire kind of body is actually encouraging the center of gravity in the lumbar section, therefore the convex curve to actually go up and correct and align. And that's a theory, right? With the convex side below in the certain areas of the plank, that you're actually encouraging the correction of that curve. Where are you at with side planks at the moment when it comes to yoga?
Yeah, and I've interviewed Dr. Fishman many times. So his theory is that if you do it on the convex side, the muscles are going to shorten, and therefore bringing the lumbar spine into a much more corrected position. And his suggestion has always been, do it at least once a day and hold it for as long as you can. And what is nice about this approach, is that it's simple, right? It's easy. If you can tell somebody, you do this one thing, then yeah, great. My problem has always been, what about my shoulder? If I now do this side plank and I have a left lumbar scoliosis, so I should be doing it on my left side. What's going to happen to my shoulder if I now do this thing for 2 minutes a day? I don't think I can hold it that long, but maybe a minute and a half or something. And then also it never felt quite right. So my convex side is my loud side, right? It's the side that is angry, that has got sensations, gets overly tight, is rotated backwards, is my problem area, right? So strengthening over it and I've just watched his research, obviously, with great interest. But for me, I never really went down that route. I always said, let's do it on both sides, but just do it slightly differently. Because I think what is correct is that we want to shorten maybe those muscles on that concave side, and we want to lengthen those muscles on the concave side, but we also want to strengthen them. They both need strengthening at the end of the day. So the Schroth approach of let's correct it and strengthen overall makes more sense to me personally. And now, according to this new research, it seems to be the way forward as well.
And that research was in regards to the muscular activity in the region?
Yes, the composition of the muscle. They had a look at the composition of the muscle, and in the concave side, it seems to be weaker, or there seems to be more fat or something like that in there. But this is still very new, and I asked Dr. Tony now from the Clear Institute as well, because he was there for this presentation. I wasn't. I asked him, what does this mean now? And he said, the only thing we can conclude from this is that we need more research.
Yeah.
It's not enough. It's not enough.
Yep. And so waiting, especially through, like, we can wait, and we can also, listen to our bodies, as you're already doing with your lumbar section, where you're listening to what it needs. And I know with the side planks, I've recommended 75% with the convex down and 25% the other side. Just even as a structural strengthening exercise, it has value. I do believe that kind of centering the fulcrum of your plank will have that effect, and I feel those effects. And sometimes it's slightly different than just a standard plank. Sometimes it's with the elbow and the feet are raised up. Like you're really, each spine is truly unique, and each tension held in the body is different. And so two people with even similar scoliosis could do the same plank and experience it differently. So it does come down to your personal experience and understanding and listening to as much as possible to your own situation.
And it's about how you do it, right? It's about how you do it rather than what exactly you do. So I think that this is a really important kind of something to add also, because you asked me earlier, obviously, are there any poses that we should maybe take out from our repertoire? It really depends on how you do it. And if you can control it, if you can still be in your alignment and counter your scoliosis, it's always going to be more challenging in some poses than others, then fine. But really it is about how you practice rather than what you do.
And it seems that the Schroth method, which is that rotational angular breathing, essentially tapping into your breath and certain gymnastic positions to create alignment, to derotate the rotation that happens in a scoliosis. That seems to have, it's becoming more and more mainstream in the conventional medical system, and that's blazed the trail. And it sounds like you've added on the extra pieces as well, or you're starting to see those extra pieces that weren't in that method, because it is we're talking a 1920s German physiotherapist style. Very standardized.
Absolutely.
So where...
And similar, Pilates is also a German,
right.
Has gotten a German origin as well. So there is a little bit of overlap. And if you look into this kind of history of this type of exercise, it's very interesting that it was fashionable during that time almost, this kind of style of exercising. Sorry, I interrupted you. There was a
Interesting.
question, wasn't
No, that's fine, because it's extremely technical, and as you're seeing as well, this neurological element, this essentially energetic element of how we have thought patterns, how our body reflects our mind and has a history of the experiences that we've been through is certainly something to dive into. I know that's where my kind of current curiosity is, looking at how can we create healthy thought patterns, how can we release emotional experiences that may be imprinted into our nervous system that allows us to gain an even more empowering relationship with our nervous system that will allow for a lot of the releasing, relaxation, the letting go, as you were mentioning, to create the space for alignment.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is not to be underestimated. And I work very closely with a psychologist on this as well. And this topic of chronic pain is a huge topic that, again, we're only starting to learn more about it now, really. And the huge impact, obviously, as you said, that thoughts and emotions have on our whole being and our whole system. And it's how interesting is it that we can affect our emotions through movement, and that movement can affect our emotions. It's so interlinked. Yeah, it's nowadays when I have back pain, I ask myself, first of all, how am I emotionally, right? What's going on in my life right now? That's the first thing. I don't go to this, oh, what have I been doing? Have I been gardening, or have I been lifting something the wrong way? Which would have been maybe 10 years ago my first kind of instinct. Oh, I must have pulled a muscle, or I must have, my back went out or something like that. I would ask myself, how do I feel emotionally? What's been going on? Am I angry? Usually it's I'm angry about something, holding a grudge.
Amazing.
Yeah, big learning curve.
Yep, and exactly. We're all learning, and I want to thank you and commend you on the information that you've put out there as you've been teaching for many years now and helping so many people I know. So I want to thank you and
yeah,
honor
thank
you for
you, and same to you as well.
Thank you. Where can people find you, and how are you currently assisting people?
So my website is called Move with Scoliosis, and I work with people one-to-one. Either here, I'm based in the UK, just outside of London, and I work with people via Zoom as well, which is very effective as well at the same time. And then I run a membership for people who are ready to, because what I have always found is that it's all good to have all this knowledge, but you actually need to do it, right? You do need to do the yoga, do the Pilates, and have a consistent practice. So in my membership, we've got a regular yoga class, we've got a regular Pilates class where we meet and we use different equipment. We do a little bit of strength training as well. So we've got a little bit of everything in there, and more curve specific education as well. So it's a little bit of everything, education, but then mainly you're going to do it. You're going to do the work in the membership as well. And obviously hear other people's stories, because I think that's very important. It's very important to have this community, to know that you're not alone. Today or yesterday in my class, we had a discussion with one lady who was considering surgery, and then we had another lady who had surgery. These are the sort of conversations. Then we've got younger people, we've got older people in there. So it's a really lovely community. That's another way of working as well with me. And then you've got my YouTube channel. There's hundreds and hundreds of videos on there.
Yeah, it's an impressive library for sure, and plugging into a community felt like, sharing the journey with other people, because you might not know someone in your local area facing the same thing. There's often not gyms that are designed for this, but ideally there will be or would be. Let's finish up with an easier, fun one then. What if someone is gonna make their home gym I see you've got some of your favorite
Yeah.
tools behind you there. What would you include in a home gym for someone who's going to start prioritizing
I
posture?
would, if you've got the space, I would have a wall ladder. I highly recommend it. There's a lot of things you can do with that. Not everybody has got the space, obviously. They're not that expensive though nowadays, relatively easy to install. I would have some hand weights, start with low weights, and then you can always build it up a little bit more. What else have I got? I've got yoga bolsters, which are really important for that relaxation piece, which I think is something that sometimes it comes last, but it's probably the one that should be first. So really important. We've got all your blankets, blocks, and yoga belts. The list obviously is endless, but they would probably be my essentials, I would say.
Yeah, fairly basic. You don't need
No.
to with just a floor and a mat. You can get a
Yeah,
lot done. And as you're saying, I think I agree. It does begin with relaxing and letting go. Alrighty,
absolutely.
Christine, thank you very much for coming on and sharing your perspective and your wisdom from helping so many people with their scoliosis.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, everyone.